Imagine being swallowed whole by the jungle. No clear path, no familiar sights, just an endless sea of green stretching beyond the horizon. That was the harsh reality for a man who vanished for nearly 2 weeks in one of the world's most unforgiving rainforests. What kept him alive when all odds were stacked against him? How does one survive 11 days surrounded by darkness, hunger, and relentless humidity, relying solely on leaves and rainwater? Today, we expose the chilling timeline of his ordeal, a survival story buried deep, now brought to light. The man was an experienced traveler, a tourist familiar with remote destinations, but not prepared for this sudden nightmare. His journey began as a routine trek deep in the tropical jungle of Southeast Asia, a region known for its dense canopy and unpredictable weather. On the 3rd day of his excursion, a wrong turn on a narrow trail led to disorientation. The dense foliage swallowed any sign of the path behind him. Soon, he was lost, cut off from the modern world by miles of impenetrable wilderness. From that moment, his survival depended on instincts and sheer determination. The first few hours were a desperate search for a way out, but as the sun dipped below the horizon, the realization settled in. He was alone, without a map, phone, or supplies. The jungle's oppressive silence was broken only by distant animal calls and the steady drip of rain. It was a place where a single mistake could mean the difference between life and death. Could you imagine the terror of spending your first night in the jungle, hearing every rustle as a possible threat? The human body can go without food for weeks, but water is a much stricter deadline. Typically, survival. Without it lasts only 3 to 5 days. This man would have to stretch every drop of moisture from the storm-soaked leaves and puddles to stay alive. By day 2, dehydration was already setting in. The relentless heat and humidity drained his energy, while the limited shelter offered by the thick canopy barely shielded him from the torrential rain. He learned quickly that the jungle is not just hostile, but also deceptive. Leaves that seemed edible often held toxins. Survival hinged on identifying safe sources of nourishment, a skill usually reserved for indigenous tribes or seasoned survivalists. He resorted to consuming tender young leaves, those less likely to cause stomach issues. The rainwater collected on broad leaves became his only source of hydration. Every drop was precious, like coins saved in a jar for a rainy day. The jungle tested his willpower brutally. Could you sleep on bare concrete for a week without food? That's comparable to how his body felt, raw, aching, and deprived. By day 5, the physical toll was undeniable. Fatigue clouded his mind. The threat of hallucinations loomed. The human brain begins to falter under such stress, especially when deprived of nutrients and proper rest. Yet, his survival instinct kept him moving, sometimes crawling through the underbrush, sometimes resting beneath the thick foliage. What's remarkable is how the body adapts. Medical studies show that under extreme conditions, metabolism slows down to conserve energy. His heart rate dropped, and his breathing slowed to preserve oxygen. Still, the risk of infection from small cuts or insect bites was high. The jungle is a breeding ground for pathogens, and with no medical aid, even minor wounds could turn fatal. The man's resourcefulness became his lifeline. Using a sharpened stick, he fashioned crude tools to dig for roots and insects, supplementing his diet. Every meal was a gamble, but better than starvation. Rainwater remained his sole hydration, collected using large leaves fashioned as funnels. Without this innovation, he wouldn't have lasted past day 6. Have you ever considered how long a human can survive without clean water? Even in controlled environments, 4 days is often the limit. He was pushing every boundary, relying on the purity of rain and the moisture trapped in leaves. His skin, constantly wet and exposed, risked hypothermia at night, despite the tropical setting. A reminder that cold can be just as deadly in the jungle as in the snow. As the days dragged on, his hope became a fragile flame. He repeated survival mantras, kept moving, avoided dangerous animals, and sought higher ground for better visibility. Night brought new dangers: the sounds of predators, the risk of poisonous snakes, and the ever-present threat of venomous insects. His sleep was broken and shallow, but rest was essential. On day 8, his body was visibly weakened, but his mind sharpened. Rescue teams had begun search operations, alerted by his missing report. Satellite tracking and local guides combed the jungle, but visibility was limited. Dense vegetation and unpredictable weather delayed their progress. The man's chances depended on luck as much as skill. Could you imagine walking 20 miles barefoot through snow? That's the kind of endurance he demonstrated, moving through thick mud and uneven terrain, barefoot for parts of the journey after his shoes were lost. His feet were blistered and bleeding, but stopping meant surrender. Each step was agony and determination combined. By day 10, dehydration and malnutrition were critical. His body was a fragile machine running on empty. Yet, he still managed to signal rescuers by lighting small fires with damp leaves and sticks. Smoke was his silent SOS, a beacon in the vast wilderness. This simple act of ingenuity may have saved his life. When rescue finally came, medical teams were stunned at his condition. He was severely dehydrated, suffering from exhaustion and malnutrition, but alive against all odds. Treatment focused on rehydration and preventing infection. His survival was a testament to human endurance and the will to live. This case has since been studied by survival experts and medical professionals. It highlights the importance of knowledge, understanding how to source water, identify edible plants, and improvise tools. It also underscores the psychological battle inherent in such situations. Mental resilience can sometimes outlast physical strength. What lessons remain? First, never underestimate the environment. Even a short hike can turn perilous without preparation. Second, water is more critical than food. Third, small innovations, collecting rainwater, using leaves as containers, can mean the difference between life and death. Finally, hope and determination are not abstract concepts. They are survival tools. Yet, questions linger. How much of survival depends on luck versus skill? Could advanced technology reduce such incidents, or does it breed complacency? And perhaps most haunting, how many similar stories remain untold, buried in the depths of forbidden archives? Every day I uncover true survival facts, stories that warn you, and stories that inspire. Subscribe so you don't miss the next investigation, and leave a comment. It helps this channel survive. Stay curious. See you tomorrow.